Amazing. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, right? I'm so excited to welcome you all today and to see all of your faces. And I just want to thank you all for tuning in. We're going to talk with our esteemed expert and fellow Dreamers and Doers member today, Kendall Cherry, the founder and executive ghostwriter of the Candid Collective. Kendall has written for multi-seven-figure startups, email empires with 550,000 subscribers, thought leaders with 5 million followers, and celebrities. Today, we're going to talk about how to assess and modify your LinkedIn account to leverage your content for revenue growth. So LinkedIn can be really effective for revenue growth, but often there's this gap between connecting with potential customers and entering them into your sales funnel. So this workshop is going to explain how to use compelling storytelling to utilize LinkedIn to its full potential and to drive sales. We are so excited to learn from you today, Kendall. We also know how valuable your time is. We're really grateful to you for investing in the Dreamers and Doers Collective in this way. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, hello, hello, hello. Or as my man Matthew McConaughey would say, I'm based in Austin, Texas. All right, all right, all right, let's do this. So I'm really excited to chat with everyone here today. And before I open up my slides, I want to give a little bit of an origin story of how this call came to be. So back in June, I am a pretty new member to Dreamers and Doers. I joined back in the May cohort. And I needed some accountability after leaving Instagram in April of 2024, which is where I built this ghostwriting business over about 3 years. And Instagram just was not serving me anymore. The algorithm was only showing my content to about 10% of my audience, and my sales had slowed, and it just seemed like something wasn't working. And yet my content was converting via email and either in person when I would use kind of the same story angles verbally. And so I made a really big decision to completely shut down my Instagram. I didn't really shut down the account, but I stopped showing up there. And in doing so, I knew I needed some form of accountability on LinkedIn. And so being new to Dreamers and Doers and just trying to connect with more people, I put out this ask that I think it was in the offers section, maybe. I can't even remember where I put it, but I basically put out an ask of if you want to be involved in my LinkedIn engagement pod, which was party of one. And I really just needed a way to get myself, because I hated engaging. I hated sending connection requests and commenting. I just needed like some form of accountability to start listing out exactly who I was going to engage with every day. So I just had some reason to show up there. What I found, and kind of the origin of this talk, and I reached out to Nicole, was as I was looking at everyone's content that was getting posted, I was seeing a lot of really valuable stories or kind of loose educational content. I sometimes tell my clients that it's giving, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. It's giving, and then I found $5. It's very kind of waffling around and it's not actually selling anything. And I kept seeing this. And I reached out to Nicole and I was like, hey, I do this for a living. I am a content and like storytelling expert and sales expert. I think the Dreamers and Doers community is leaving millions of dollars on the table just from their content alone. And so we kind of put our heads together, and that is the kind of origin story of why I'm here today and what I'm here to do and help you learn how to tell more stories that sell in your LinkedIn content. So without further ado, allow me to open up my deck, my bag of tricks, and get us started on this little journey. Okay, so name of the presentation today, like I said, how to write storytelling content that sells on LinkedIn. As Nicole mentioned, my name is Kendall Cherry. I'm the founder and executive ghostwriter here at the Candid Collective, and we're on a mission to create a world that's more candid and kind. One thing you need to know about me is I've written for some of the biggest brands on the internet. A lot of them tend to have a financial journalism leaning lens, but I've written for really, really big brands, creator brands, and have kind of mastered the art of B2B sales inside of storytelling content. So my whole approach is really figuring out a way to connect with your audience without making it feel like you are just this used car salesman kind of sales technique or a tactic. In my services guide, I call this the pretty fly for a white guy 1980s sales tactics that we all know and love to hate. So that's not really my style. I tend to write for about 95% minority entrepreneurs, typically women, LGBTQ, people of color, some veterans, and even some older generation brands, but people that are marginalized in some way. And what I've noticed is that the whole idea of selling and sales, especially when it comes to content, makes people feel really uncomfortable. So I started doing some digging, some major research. It's been about a 3-year R&D process, and I'm going to share a lot of my findings today. And we'll zoom in on some of the different story frameworks and approaches that you can apply to not only LinkedIn, but to any content on the internet. So it could be for Instagram, email, it works for podcasts, it works for any kind of verbal speaking. So this is not just a LinkedIn approach. All of the content that I have written for my brand started and actually lived on Instagram for many years. My entire LinkedIn catalog of content is mostly repurposed email content and Instagram content. So the exciting news is the framework works in any form of content where you're selling your story. It doesn't have to be on LinkedIn, and it's very agnostic. So if LinkedIn is the thing and the place to be this year and something changes, the approach will still stand if you move to another platform or you find another way of or place that you want to be selling. So here is what we're going to break down today. We're going to talk about 2 of the main characters that are in every single sales story in your business. We're going to talk about 5 story frameworks that are going to help you sell on LinkedIn. Then we're going to zoom in specifically on 2 of those high converting content styles, so you know exactly how to start writing it yourself or get some inspiration. I'm also going to go through a light version of how to optimize your LinkedIn profile, and then we're going to do a Q&A. One thing about me is I'm a pretty open book. So if at any time in the presentation you do have questions, you're welcome to just throw them in the chat, and Nicole's going to let me know, and I'll just answer them in the moment because I find it's a little bit easier in the learning journey. So feel free to use chat at any time. I also have a newsletter where I write about how to tell stories that sell called Wildflower Fridays. It is out every single Friday, and it's very, very meta. It's talking about big, issues that we face as a world and a society and as business owners, but it's also teaching you how to tell more stories that sell. So if that's your vibe, this is my newsletter that I publish every single Friday, and I would love for you to join. All right, let's get into this. So a few things you need to know about me before we get started. Before I started a business back in 2019, I had an 8-year career in corporate communications and internal training. I had kind of a fluke of a first job straight out of college. I was 21 years old in the C-suite of a Fortune 100 company, ghostwriting for a senior executive. It was just one of those little kismet things that happened and kind of showed me that I could have a corporate career. I grew up very blue collar. My dad was a firefighter. My mom was a preschool teacher. And it was a really big deal that I, quote unquote, made it in corporate America. And I was the first in our generation to go white collar. And I freaking hated my job. And I was really good at it. I was promoting exceptionally fast, but I just couldn't see myself there long term. While I was in and kind of promoting in that job, I also got a master's degree in public relations, specifically focused on executive and internal communication. So I'll say the seeds were always planted for me to be a ghostwriter. I just never thought that a girl like me with a 6-figure salary and all of the golden handcuffs and corporate healthcare benefits could ever start a business. What this kind of storytelling for sales framework that we're about to get into as well is what I've learned from over 3 years of entrepreneurship. I've written for over 90 online brands and creators, and I've tested 7 business models, including agencies, coaching, consulting, selling digital products, you name it. I've tested it all, and I've learned how to sell it all in just 3 short years. Other important things about this approach. I'm also an introvert with really good social and communication skills. So I know I seem bubbly, and I am, but 100% chance I'm about to go take a nap and be a little homebody after this presentation. If you're into human design, I'm also a 6'3" self-projected projector. Cat Mom to Linus and Maisie, which we already talked about. That's mostly here just in case they do tend to cross over into the screen. And the other thing that I'll share is, again, all of the stories you're about to learn today, those frameworks work on any form of content. In 3 years, I'm a first generation entrepreneur. I'm a first generation, I'll say, entrepreneur at this point. My family did not really have a lot of business skills. I didn't grow up talking about money at the dinner table. And I built this business on $10,000 in savings from my corporate career, a personal credit card, and cash flow. And in 3 years, I've closed $550,000 in revenue from content alone from my email list. So these stories I'm sharing with you are the way to convert into clients, into customers, into sales without feeling like you've got to post these like broetry types of things, and also sell in a way that feels authentic to who you are and your key energy. Okay, so we've kind of shared a little bit about my story so far. Basically started from the bottom, now we're here. For the longest time, my business was really built over on Instagram. And like I mentioned, all of that content that I'd created served me on Instagram. I just didn't have the audience volume for the types of sales that I wanted to be making. And I knew that for me to fund and self-fund my career as a nonfiction author, which is my biggest dream, not that I don't want to ghostwrite content, but I'm a memoirist and I'm here to write nonfiction books that transform souls. I also knew that I needed to create a bunch of capital to be able to do it. So I always have been pro B2B service as a way to create really high ticket sales in order to fund what I really want to do, which is write the books that have been swimming around in my brain for many, many decades. So one thing that we're going to talk about now are 2 of the key characters that are going to take place in any of your sales stories. The first, there's kind of I'll say an antagonist and a protagonist. Your antagonist is going to be what I call the DIYer, never buyer. This is your energy vampire. This is the person that loves all of your content. They are stalking you in your DMs. They are asking you question after question after question. But these are also the people that love your free content. Anytime you post educational tips and tricks, they're taking notes. They're really trying to honestly, kind of steal a little bit of your intellectual property or what you're here and the energy you're giving into the world, but they're never going to pay for a service or a product or anything like that. These are your, I usually call them like free 99 style of audience. What I'd see most of the time and kind of what prompted this presentation today is that the DIYer never buyer is basically a cheap dopamine hit. Most of the content that I've seen online, I see it all day, every day. It's not just in the dreamers and doers community. It's, anywhere. A lot of people think that to create sales, you need to get engagement and volume and lots of comments and lots of likes. What I would offer is that this is actually a secret trick to tricking you into thinking it's a dopamine hit. You've got all this attention and visibility, but the content itself isn't actually selling. It's creating a conversation, but it's not creating a loop in someone's head and kind of the sales psychology behind it. It's not creating the loop of, oh, I need to pay this person and work with them, or, I need their product or whatever it is. It doesn't really create that loop. That psychological loop is actually saying, oh, they're going to just tell me exactly what to do, and I can sit here and take notes. If you're an education brand, it does get a little bit nuanced where, we are here to help people understand how you can serve them, but you also can't serve unless you sell. The other thing that I see a lot of times is people who do a lot of audience building in a way that is appealing to DIY or never buyers. Again, lots of engagement or maybe, sales bundles or these kinds of things, which is fine. But if you have an audience of DIY or never buyers, these are pretty much the key reason you would have either a launch flop for a service, a new customer segment, a new product. This kind of audience growth strategy, it is giving, vanity metrics, but it's not actually converting into sales. So if this sounds like you, or you've ever wondered kind of what's going on, my guess is you secretly have accidentally built an audience full of DIYer never buyers. So that's the bad news. The good news is there is a protagonist in your business's sales story. And this person is a little person I like to call your longtime lurker. This is your secret number one fan. This is your future customer. This is the person that is hashtag obsessed with everything that you post, write, or do. This is also the person that literally writes in their journal and manifests, I am hiring Kendall Cherry to be my ghostwriter, or I am hiring this person, your name, to do whatever it is that you do. Your longtime lurker is likely the person that is very aware that they need your services and what you do, especially if your content is selling. The only problem is most of the time it's a timing issue. They either don't have the budget yet to work with you, or there's some other things that have to work out before they can hire you, and then they'll be ready. For some perspective, I'll sometimes get emails from people who have been on my email list or on my LinkedIn for 2 years before they've hired me. They've known for years that they want to work with me. It's not the right time. They had a pivot, they had a baby, like so many things can happen. The longest, and this is an insane metric, but this just happened this summer, my longest longtime lurker was in my audience for 9 years on LinkedIn. For some perspective, 9 years ago, I was an intern in the music industry in Nashville, Tennessee. I was not a business owner. I had not graduated college, and there was no way I had ever even thought I was going to own a business, much less ghostwrite content. So do not underestimate the power of having quality content that is selling, but knowing that those people are around. The only thing about the longtime lurker is they are a little bit hidden. They don't want you to know that they're reading, but they're there. And there are some ways you can kind of check and see if people are around. There's one content framework that I'm going to share today that will give you some eyes and some visibility sneakily on if you've got longtime lurkers without being pushy or cold pitching or anything of that nature. If you have an email list, an easy way to see a longtime lurker is if you're linking to maybe a services guide or a website, a sales page. You can always look and see. I do this every email. I'm also a longtime lurker with my customers. I will just click on the click rates and I look and see whose name and which email is kind of clicking around over there. And I'll sometimes watch clients for 12 weeks clicking my services guide before they finally convert. So long-time lurking kind of goes both ways, but it's challenging when you want the dopamine hit, you want the engagement, you want people to, obviously work with you and reach out, and you want the sales and you want the visibility and all of the fast growth and all these things. But I would argue fast growth is only great if it's going to lead to customers and sales. Also, literally, my cat is just like really loving this right now. Okay, do we have any questions before I move on? I know I'm going fast. No? Okay, sweet. All right, so here's the deal, my friends. If you want to sell in your content, you really only need to know 5 stories. That's it. You do not need 20 different content frameworks. You do not need formulas or anything else that anyone has ever sold you in a low value copywriting product. You just need stories. The other thing, like I mentioned, these stories are agnostic to the channel. So if LinkedIn's the hot tool right now and it ends up being something else, no big deal. If it ends up being Instagram, or you're a TikTok girly, or maybe, hold on, sorry, this is actually kind of weird. If you're someone that is on email, or maybe you have a podcast, or even in sales calls, these stories are agnostic to the channel. So you can post them wherever you'd like. So this is coming in a future book that I'm currently writing. It's my first book ever, name TBD, but I'm actually writing a book about B2B sales skills and these frameworks. Oh my gosh, the cat is really just loving this. This framework is what this book is about, and it's diving in a little bit more, but these are the story selling frameworks that you must tell in every single business. The first is going to be your origin story. This is basically about you. It's why you started your business. It's maybe why you started a specific offer. This origin story basically connects and is a parallel line between you. Oh my gosh, the cat is just, hold on, you guys. Sorry. He is So annoying. The origin story is basically how you got started, and it connects as a parallel line between you and your ideal customer. So an example, I've already done it a couple of times here today, if you know what you're looking for. Me saying that I had a corporate career and, all of those things about being blue collar, I'm specifically calling out moments and golden nuggets in my story that will hopefully resonate with where you came from. And that is going to create psychological buy-in, kind of top of the funnel, I'll say story that sells tactic. The next is going to be a core value. This could be something like a hot take that you have, why your work matters. This is another key area that is the fastest way to connect into your ideal customer segment and target audience, because most people don't think of it this way, but the core values that you hold true are also going to resonate with your target audience. The types of people you want to work with, the types of customers, you likely have at least some connection to at least one value, if not more than one. And so that is why it's so important to talk about those things. The next story is more of a day in the life, painting a picture of either your ideal day in the life and kind of how you run your business, or how your ideal target audience is going to run their day in the life. So this could be things like their current pain points and what they're dealing with without being ethical or preying on like very traumatic things, like maybe some old school sales tactics that the bros are doing. It's not necessarily that, but it is using pain points in a very ethical, very, I'll say, reverent and conscious way, or also talking about the future success of your customer. So this could be, what some success outcomes could look like, but kind of painting that picture. It's not just listing them out necessarily, it's painting a picture and a vision of what that life either currently looks like or could look like in the future. The next is going to be your differentiators. These last two are definitely going to be the ones that are the most left on the table, that I think most people have the hardest time with. And that's because we don't want to sound braggy or like we, contributed all of these results, even though we work really, really hard for our clients, our customers, and the work that we put out into the world. So when it comes to your differentiators, the first kind of area this could show up is just your general skill set, maybe past experience, maybe your perspective. You've been in certain rooms. For some, I'll say, kind of to look under the hood of my differentiators, I painted this picture for you and my story that I shared earlier by sharing that I had a corporate career. I shared some of the logos of companies that I've seen behind the curtain of, and that paints that picture as well. I also randomly dropped that I worked in the music industry. So kind of doing some origin story mixed with a little bit of a differentiator as well. And then by far, the one that is the biggest thing that we're going to talk about a little bit more specifically in a minute is your client transformations. And this is kind of the story of the before and after of the work that you've done with your clients or your customers, and or your unique value proposition. When I think about a UVP, the thing I think most people don't understand is I think there's like a weird kind of collective trauma around the word value. Like, I bring value. Value just equals money. And there's many different ways that you can create money on behalf, if it's an ROI kind of thing, there's value in many different things. There's value in time saved. There's value in revenue that's been created. There's value in revenue that's been redistributed. There's many, many, many different ways that this can take place. But UVP is really just kind of communicating based on your process and how you approach things. What is the value that the work that you do or that your product that you have, what does that bring? The other thing that I will share, and this is really relevant for LinkedIn, the storytelling for sales kind of framework is basically a funnel. You go, start at the top, and then you can go down, and then you just start it again. So this is really, if you think of this almost like if this is a content machine, this is a gear. This is a cycle that you keep going through every time. And to be honest, and this is kind of a hot take that you probably are not hearing on the internet, Right now, my LinkedIn content runs on an 8-month content library that's already been written with all of these stories kind of pieced throughout, strategically kind of sprinkled in. And we run the same content playbook over and over and over again. Some of the content in my library has been posted on the internet for over 2.5 years. And it's a mix between email and old Instagram posts that are now in a big bulk doc that we just run it back, run it back, run it back. And I sometimes write some fresh stuff, but I think the key here is you don't have to be writing your content fresh every single week if it's selling. If your content is not selling, you're likely having to do a lot more manual selling, either in calls or prospecting. But your content, if it's selling for you, is the thing that actually allows you to execute your business more in what I like to call offline mode, or letting your content do the majority of the heavy lifting. This is a very friendly way to write content that sells. It's a very projector friendly way if you're into human design and you like to wait for the invitation to be invited in to ghostwrite for somebody or do the service that you do. This is a very, very, I'll say laissez-faire way, very open way to sign clients, get customers. It's almost like hanging an open for business sign and you're just kind of running back through the content playbook. Okay.
Kendall,
So,
quick question in the chat.
oh yeah.
Do you use a scheduling tool?
Nope, I do not. I hire a VA for $200 a month, and we have an 83-page doc with my content library, and she schedules it for me on a Sunday, and I don't think about my content at all. So $200 a month, people. It's pretty sweet. So once you have the content, I don't do any posting myself. I know our playbook's stacked, and so she just goes in on a Sunday. We have a little process. And I'll kind of spoiler alert, not to spoil the ending. I actually have a training that I give all of my LinkedIn ghostwriting clients that I normally sell for $97, but I'm going to gift it to every dreamer and doer for free. That actually goes into and shows you the doc and how it's set up. So you can create your own LinkedIn content bank. It also will go deeper into how to optimize your profile, more so even deeper than like what I'll share today, but also how to start building a content library for yourself and how to start creating and compounding momentum on the platform so that you can get your LinkedIn content out there and selling and create a library for yourself. So that's coming. Spoiler alert, not to again spoil the ending for you, but that is coming, and it is going to show you exactly. I can't remember if I actually go into the specifics of like how my team manages it, but it is like literally managed from a Google Doc. It's extremely easy to run. I literally don't ever talk to my VA except for if she reads a funny post and she wants to laugh because I like went off on an AI bro or something, or I had a particularly spicy take. But otherwise, I literally don't communicate with my VA, and we're locked and loaded, ready to go every week. And I don't worry about my content. And I post 5 times a week on LinkedIn. So that's the hack.
I love that. Thank you so much. Everybody
Yeah,
is
no
so
problem.
excited about this in the chat. Like so much excitement about that resource. So thank you so much. And then also
Yeah.
2 more questions came in. Do you mind
So
answering?
let's go,
Okay,
baby. Let's go.
amazing. That was Kate's question. So
Okay,
Romy was
thanks, Kate.
wondering if this approach attracts leads and clients to you, or do you still find yourself pitching potential projects?
I don't pitch. I do not pitch at all. I am hot take here, laissez-faire. I think in an online business, I find that online business moves so much faster than brick and mortar. So my general philosophy, I have had clients come to me that have shown me, I'm not going to say it's sold by white men, but it is sold by white men, that they have basically, it's usually women that have been targeted by other people and are oversold to. So I just had this happen in July where I had 2 female founders that were working together, need some kind of like a sales deck. And so they'd reached out, I told them what my rate was going to be, and they, said like, hey, how does this fit into what we already have? And unfortunately, it was a 20K proposal that they had paid. And when I looked at what the sales ecosystem looked like, it was pretty much unusable. They hated the process. It wasn't authentic to them. And so it became this issue of, well, now I can't get in there and help them because they've already overspent on bad budget. than just misallocated budget, and because they didn't know any better. So I do a lot of educating with my prospects up front on kind of what I do, just to help people feel more empowered with their business investment, because I just don't believe that pitching is it can be a weird dynamic. The other thing that I will say when it comes to pitching, online business moves so fast, and I sometimes will get clients that maybe don't have any budget to work with me, and then all of a sudden they sign one huge retainer or one huge project, and now magically they have $10,000 to spend with me. And so I don't like making people feel constrained by budget at all. And I want to keep the energetic would be, I'm kind of this like rider in the woods in her little cabin, and like someone comes to me when they're ready for whatever it is that they need. Most of the time it's like, it would be almost like a healer energy or an apothecary. Like, you don't really know what you don't know. And I'm not about to sit here and propose or pitch like a 40K pitch just because I can and I could. That's not how I run a business. And so I personally don't pitch. And what I will say is, by setting that boundary, but holding really, really tight qualifiers of who's the right kind of writing client for me and in my business, I get much better clients who I love working with and who I genuinely make a much bigger impact, because the nature of the work that I do, I'm a revenue generating task. I know this. I'm considered a premium price in a service, but I also know that I know exactly how to get my clients the results that they're looking for. So I know this about myself, but I'm not going to sit here and pitch 50K just because I can. It's more important for me to get in the right rooms with the right people and help whoever it is basically use their investment in a really smart way that is a sales asset that serves the business for not just a couple of weeks or a couple of months, but it's very similar to like the LinkedIn content. It is a sales asset that serves the business for as long as that product, service, or target audience is the right fit. So I'm not a big pitcher. That's not my take. That's not how I do business. And it's more fun this way too. So that's kind of my hot takes there. Okay, next.
Thank you. Okay, next. So Audrina was wondering, this might be a question that might be answered in the resource that you share, but she's asking about this is about the Google Doc that you shared. I think she was asking about what the flow looks like for this. So like, is it one post in each category, 1 week at a time?
Oh, yeah. Honestly, the great thing about this is it's extremely agnostic. So as long as you're posting at least some of these, I will say the tendency for most people is you're going to hang out up at the top 3, just because we don't like to brag. So just know that that's kind of a tendency. But the good thing about this is it really is agnostic, and you can kind of move around every few posts. I would say in general, like client transformation stories, which I'll share kind of more of what that looks like, I recommend these should be going out probably every 2 weeks. Differentiators every 2 weeks. The others you can just kind of sprinkle in as needed. But client transformations, you don't want to be doing like a big case study every single week. I think people, it's a pretty big swing. It's kind of bottom of the funnel content. So I would say, kind of every 2 weeks is good. But yeah, the other content you can kind of mix and match. If you're not sure what this looks like and you want to, a deep dive on how to do it, I mean, you can just sit and look at my LinkedIn page and just click the posts and just start looking at how I'm doing it and kind of pull from that. All of the types of content are at least one of these if you need inspiration, but it doesn't necessarily have to be so. That's the great thing about this framework, is it's not like first you post, this on Mondays or this on Tuesdays. It's not 2020 content pillars, which are kind of like not that helpful, like educate, value, inspire, like that's not selling anything. So it has a large margin of error if for some reason you're kind of stuck in one. I would say just make sure you're moving around. Don't only do origin story, but it's really meant to be very fluid and intuitive versus the more masculine, like Mondays is, what is it? Throwback Thursday or whatever. It's not really that. It's a little bit more like a living, breathing organism than I would say like a system or a robot, I would say is how I would think about that.
Amazing. Thank you. And then one more question came through.
Oh, let's go. I'm
Melissa's
not
wondering,
maybe.
Melissa's wondering how long it took you to curate that 8-month content cycle. She said, would love an idea of the time to build that and put it into action.
Yeah. So what I did back, so when I moved from Instagram, I basically was like, okay, I have the VA in place. Like there's some traction on LinkedIn. Like, let's figure this out. So it took me, I culled through 3 years of content, and I'm a content brand. So I am living, breathing, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of posts. It was a 6-hour process for me. Keep in mind, I'm a content person, so this might take you longer. But it was about a 6-hour process for me to just, I basically pulled my old content and then I tweaked it. I had like for example, in my second year in business, I had kind of I'll say a misalignment, thinking that I was a fractional CMO. So some of my messaging was like, I was like, oh, this is why you were getting unqualified leads, or like, this is why like that one nightmare client came through. And so I cleaned that up. So it was about a 6-hour process for me. I just do it in one big bulk. And then from there, it just sits and is ready to go. What I will say is one thing that I do with my clients is kind of a VIP day style offer where I'll do a deep dive into like what already exists, and I'll build the content library for you, depending on your budget, how many posts you need. The great thing is, I'll say 6 months of content is really only about 120 posts. So you probably have some stuff. Again, top of the funnel is likely a little bit in there. Bottom of the funnel stuff, there's probably some gaps. But with the VIP days, depending on how many content pieces that you need, I'll do a deep dive of what does exist, make some recommendations on for however much content I would fill in, and then tell you like, okay, you need 6 client transformations, you need 5 core values, et cetera, et cetera. And I can either write it for you, or I can at least give you kind of like a diagnostic of like, here's the type of content that needs to get written, especially if you have a content writer on your team or something, and they're, you're confident that they know how to sell your services. I can just do the kind of the content, I'll say, it's not really, it's content strategy, but it's sales strategy. I can do the strategy piece, or I can also write those pieces for you. And it just depends. I'm pretty flexible as far as like, if you only need 4 posts, I can write 4 posts. If you need 20 posts, we might need a couple of days, but I can write 20 posts for you. So it just depends, like, how much of an asset are you looking for? And I mean, how badly do you not want to have to worry about writing your own and kind of reposting your LinkedIn content? But I'm pretty flexible as far as like writing per concept as needed.
Amazing. And then follow-up questions that are actually pretty similar
Okay.
so Katie was wondering, does the content come from the brand or from the CEO? And then
Mm.
also Charlotte was wondering, like, is sharing about personal life helpful to build engagement and like show vulnerability, or do you focus mostly on the business? So sort of related.
Ooh, this is such a good, juicy question. Okay, hot take. If I didn't have an online business, I like would not be on the internet at all. I'd be living my life. No one would know anything about me. So I'm very, very boundaried about what I will and won't like talk about personally. So I have some, I'll say, personal content pillars that I'll talk about in the interest of vulnerability, but I don't want people in my personal life. Like, I run a business and I don't know, it's weird for me. So content categories in my content pillars would include topics like cats, pickleball, Taylor Swift, the books that I'm currently reading. Those are kind of open game, but I don't need to talk to you about like what I'm talking about in therapy or, whatever else. I think there are times when you can use your story for specific like strategic reasons, but I don't think we need to like trauma dump or be vulnerable for the sake of being vulnerable. I don't love that. It feels kind of gimmicky when I've tried it in the past, and I still, I want to make sure that I feel protected, and I have a private life that's really important to me. So I have kind of boundaries that I've set for myself of like what I will and won't share. And that to me is what works based on that. But it just depends. Like, if you're a coach and you do a lot of trauma informed work, like, it's up to you if like how much do you want to share, but I think you get the choice. and you get to set the boundary of what you are or are not comfortable with. I am a memoirist, so there are moments and there are certain parts of my story that I will tell, but I'm also boundaried about certain other parts where I'm either protecting another person who's maybe wronged me, or I haven't processed it. I have a executive coach, and the one thing we always kind of talk about, because it's really weird being a memoirist and like my life is the story and it's lots of trauma, like what's the right move? We kind of have a saying where it's like, you never push publish on an unprocessed thought, feeling, or emotion. So if you haven't processed it, like don't put it out into the world yet. Let it sit, let yourself integrate. You're good. You're not gonna like not close a sale because you didn't, word vomit about your feelings that day. Like that isn't gonna do much. What was the other question? I think there's half the question I missed.
Yeah, no, that was beautiful. And the other question was like, are you speaking for the content, is it
Founder.
CEO? Yeah.
I personally think that in today's content ecosystem, I really and truly think that we as people and business owners, I'm not saying the business is a reflection of the personal, but it did come from I'll say the source material is the person behind it. So every CEO, doesn't matter who you are, what industry you're in, the source material for a CEO is your story. You're also the number one salesperson in a business. So you have to be able to tell the story from your perspective. It's what every investor is looking for in a pitch deck. It is what every customer is looking for on a sales call or on a sales page if they're going to buy from you. And so I'm of the belief that a brand doesn't need to feel like a brand. I really think, especially in today's kind of ecosystem and market, it needs to feel more human, especially with like the nature of AI and everything else. The brand can be a living, breathing organism. Most of the time, it's mirroring the founder or the CEO, or the brand itself kind of has its own personality. Brands that I think have really interesting personalities that maybe aren't so CEO centered. Like I love Ellevest's kind of style. I love Sweet Green, kind of has its own kind of unique flair, but it still feels a little like a personal brand at times. And I think that is kind of the way to do it in today's climate. If you're on LinkedIn, I don't post at all from the Candid Collective account. Like I literally use the Kendall Cherry account as this is how I'm selling, because the story is what's resonating with the people I need to close sales with, which is usually another person on a phone call or who's reading my materials. So I'm always kind of team one-to-one versus like this big, it's almost like it's so head in the clouds. The brand can get so like, just ethereal almost, that it's really tough to have that connection, like with your customer, with your ideal client, with your target audience. So I always try to keep it from one source to another source. Okay. Good. Okay. I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna run out of time. Okay, I'm gonna try my best. I'm also down to stay on if that's fine to finish this up. Yeah, because this is important stuff, you guys. Millions of dollars on the table. Okay, so now we're going to talk about one of the specific types of content styles. I like to call this the lead qualifying listicle. This is one of the best ways to identify if you have a longtime lurker in your audience. So the idea here is we want to create a listicle. People love lists. It's really great, easy to skim. An example of what this looks like is this kind of list. This example is specifically talking through the ROI on a copy investment. So this is the sales angle for my business as a B2B sales copywriter and ghostwriter. So what you'll notice if you were to really dig into this, this is not necessarily a formula, although if you wanted to hang out on my LinkedIn page, you could kind of pick some of my hooks if you wanted to and apply it to your business. I'm not saying you don't. I mean, I'm not going to know. But just so you know kind of how this is working, this is your lead qualifiers. So for example, again, this is kind of the ROI on a copy investment. 14 signs your copy and content is doing more with less. I'll read number 2 because it's kind of small. It says you have a solid content bank you can repost at least once a quarter if and when you don't feel creative. That is a very specific UVP for my business. And by posting that, I'm kind of putting out the signal to anyone in my ether who could be a lead. I'm letting them know that that is one of the benefits of the service that I do. Usually at the bottom, again, if you want to see this in action, just go check out my LinkedIn content, because it's a 14 list basically, so it's kind of tough to see. But at the bottom, there's a little call to action, and what you'll notice is this is actually a comment and engagement strategy, because what ends up happening is people will reply back. They'll say, oh my God, I'm being such a 4 this week, or wow, 3 like totally sounds like me. What this is doing, it's doing 2 things which are key for the LinkedIn algorithm. The first is that you are getting a direct look at who your longtime lurkers are. So they're reading your content, they're at least brave enough to say something, but they don't know that they're being baited to reveal themselves. Doesn't mean you go in there and you cold pitch them. It just gives you an idea of like, okay, the content's clearly resonating, they're getting nurtured, all is well, I don't have a messaging problem. So you're getting that signal, but it does not mean that you do the 2020 style, like, hey girl, DM, like you do not need to be doing that. The other thing that it does is it also creates more momentum with the LinkedIn algorithm, because when someone comments on your post, it then sends it to anyone in the audience of the person who commented. So not only are you getting visibility in your content for who your longtime lurkers are, you're also generating momentum for the LinkedIn algorithm to show your content to more people. And 9 times out of 10, the person who's a longtime lurker is probably a pretty qualified lead, and their network is also probably filled with other qualified leads for what you do. So it's a very, very strategic way to target, get visibility onto who some potential leads could be, and get in front of more people. Like I said, this one, there is going to be the easiest way to do this. You'll see them all over my content. It's literally just like 14 signs, or like 6 business truths, or like 7 things I learned about XYZ that changed the way I write content for clients, or whatever. If you go to my LinkedIn page and click posts, I really hate the LinkedIn profile because you can't really see. It's like not the easiest to navigate, but just click over to there, and you'll be able to see the listicles and hooks. And like I said, I'm not going to know if you look at the hook and you adapt it for your own business. Please lift where necessary, because this is a really, really great content strategy for telling more stories that sell. Okay. Did we
Kendall,
get a
quick
question?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned you touched on this before, but Catherine was wondering, what are your thoughts on LinkedIn pods, like joining the group to comment on each other's posts to boost the algorithm? But you mentioned this earlier.
I don't think they're that great, to be honest. I don't know. I think it gets a little sus when you're like noticing that like the same people are commenting on the same stuff. And I do think the algorithm starts to pay attention and only show the content to the same people in the pod. So to me, it's all about getting in front of fresh energy, fresh eyes. So my preferred method is to like, if you wanted to, you could pull a list of like, as people are responding to the lead qualifying listicle, make that your engagement pod and just kind of see what happens. Like you at least know you have a lead, but I don't know, the energy exchange. I'm like, what happens if one person is really contributing and someone else isn't? Like, I don't love that. So I'm kind of all about like individual empowerment and, finding your own people and then going from there. I do go into this a little bit more in the more of the prospecting on LinkedIn and the free training that I'm going to send over. So you'll get like the tea. It's literally 75 minutes. Not that this is not going to turn into a 75-minute training, but it's 75 minutes and we'll go much deeper into that for you. Okay, next.
One more question.
I know, I saw it.
Advice for visual content creators. This question is, lately I'm feeling blocked with written copy, but I'm stronger with visual. So any advice for visual content creators?
Yes, yes. So that actually brings me to our next point, which is the client testimonial. So we're going to talk about the testimonials, and I'll give you, if you want to go back and look at my Instagram account, I still have all of my old content up there. It's just Candid Collective Co. I'm not following anyone, and I won't see or respond to you, but you can see how I've done and developed lots of visuals over the years that pair really nicely for a more visual brand. One of the things that I see a lot is the misuse of copy paste testimonials. And this is one example. Poor baby Kendall in year two of her business was doing this. And I see this all the time on LinkedIn. And one of the things, again, if you're looking for like specific visuals, my Instagram account is going to be your best friend. I want to kind of talk about the other style of content, because it could be visual if you wanted it to be. So what happens when you're sending testimonials like this, and you think it's doing great? It's like, look at what my client said about me, and like it's social proof. And we're using the same strategy that we would use on a website for social, but it doesn't work the same way. What you're actually doing when you post a testimonial like this, you are basically teaching your audience to not take your content seriously and to keep scrolling. Because think about the way that, and like your user behavior on LinkedIn. When I see one of these, I'm like, that's cool. Like, move on. Like 5 stars, sweet, moving on with my life. You're not actually reading most likely what it says. And you're also training people to not actually read the words of what is going on there. It's not communicating, again, that bottom of the funnel before and after. It's not really talking about a UVP. It's just like, you're kind of forcing, there's a lot of resistance here because you're kind of forcing your ideal client or customer to interpret what they're supposed to know about the story and the experience. The way to combat this is with a type of content that I like to call a money-making testimonial, which is basically a content case study. So again, if you go to my Instagram account, you'll see these can be very visual, or these can also be just email content, long form content on LinkedIn. They work great as visuals. I have tons of these on my Instagram account if you're looking for inspiration. The idea here with a money-making testimonial is you don't necessarily have to have a client that tells you their experience of working with you. It's all about your interpretation of what happened, their before and after story, what your process was, how you approached the problem, and or what results it created. There's a lot of different ways to communicate that. Again, it could be dollars generated, it could be costs saved, it could be time saved. There's many different ways, but there are really, really easy ways to kind of compartmentalize these up. The other thing that's really great about money-making testimonials, other than, it's that bottom of the funnel, like, these are my results, I dropped my mic, this is what I can do. It's not just that. Money-making testimonials are also a huge repurposing tool. These are the stories that when someone has an objection on a sales call, instead of handling the objection, you basically just tell the story. I've also in the past, I've literally linked to my old money-making testimonials. I've used them as case studies on my website. I send them as email newsletters. I've put them on Instagram. I even talk about them in a podcast. So that story, again, if you remember that triangle, it's the one at the very, very bottom. That money-making testimonial is truly the kind of story vignette that keeps giving. And it is bottom of the funnel. This is what I'm here to do. This is how I approach my work. And there's a lot of different ways to write them. Easiest way to find all of mine in one place. Again, not that I'm pro Instagram or Meta, but my Instagram content is still up there, so that if you did want to go back and dig in my content archive, they're all right there and you can quickly see how they all work. Did we get another question, Nicole? No? Okay. There's that one. Okay. Let's do a very quick dive. This is going to be in that training as well, but there are some really quick wins when it comes to your profile header image on LinkedIn. A couple things that are happening here. First and foremost, I have like a really great tagline of kind of what I'm here to do. I designed this myself, so, I'm sure there's a marketing person that can make this even like hotter, but this is fine for what I needed at the time. The biggest things that are happening here, if you're strategic about this and kind of how I see it, first off, this photo, it's very unexpected. So when I'm commenting, people are like, what is this girl's photo? I literally get so many DMs every week of like, this is so fun. Like the energy here is so great because it's completely unexpected. Also fits with the brand, the Candid Collective. It's a candid photo of me. I'm jumping. There's sunflowers. The other thing is, I want to zoom in right here. This first line at the very top, that is what shows up in LinkedIn when I'm commenting. So when I'm commenting as someone on someone's post, it says writer of stories that sell. And then it says, you've definitely seen my work. So it creates that loop of like, have I? Let me click and see what happens. And in doing so, then the other thing that's important here is, you know, I displayed my social proof. This one, I will say, of the, I mean, literally hundreds of LinkedIn profiles I've reviewed. This is like a huge way, especially we're all in dreamers and doers. We're getting promoted. We're winning PR. We're working at big, you know, corporations or big partnerships. Display those logos just like you would on a website. And it's one of the bigger authority building elements on the profile that will help you if you're a coach or someone in a really saturated industry, a marketing flavor of role. These are the things that are going to make you, if someone, you know, has you up in a lineup with 5 of your competitors, the logos are by far the thing that are going to push you to the front of the line. And then the other thing that I'll talk about very briefly, I also have an offer that I write for clients called Bio in a Box. It's basically your LinkedIn About section. I also zoom into this a little bit more in that training that I'm going to send out. This is the most painful section of LinkedIn that I see other than the content. And I see so many people that have two philosophies. It's either you've got a really long run-on paragraph and you approach it like it were a sales page on a website. But the problem is it's almost like you're given kind of a free range and you could do anything with the area. And so you just think like it's supposed to be a long paragraph, like a normal sales page, but it's so hard to read. And LinkedIn people are very, very leery about if they're getting sold to. Like their radar for like gross, cringy sales pitches is very high. We've all gotten those like, you know, cold pitch, you know, DMs or LinkedIn mail. So people are kind of always on red alert of like, are they for real? Are they being authentic? Are they just trying to close? And so I find that having too much of a salesy sales page approach is really, really tough to combat as far as an audience behavior. You pretty much get one look when someone first looks at your profile. And if it's not set up in a way where it's kind of subliminally selling, it's a good chance someone's going to not really take you seriously. To zoom in quickly on what's going on here, and again, there's going to be a little bit deeper of a dive in that training we're sending out. You'll notice first off, it's very clear things are in sections. So it's all created by me. It's not really, you know, a big paragraph, but it kind of is easy to scan. So this here, this is if this were my story that sells, this is my differentiators. This is my kind of social proof and some of the things that I've written for. This Ask Me About section is a very strategic way to share the kind of thought leadership or big authority building content topics that are important to you. What it does is it creates the loop. If someone, let's say they had a podcast or a community or whatever else, it really kind of creates the loop of like, this is what they're an expert in. Maybe sells your products and services at the same time, but it really creates that kind of done for you podcast pitch, or kind of shares like, what are you an absolute expert in? So for me, it's like, what the hell do you send to a tiny ass email list? Mine is under 600 subscribers again, like I mentioned, and has closed 550K in revenue. So people are always wanting to learn about that. Thinking like a bank and how to create content that compounds interest and closes deals, how to make your content your 24/7 salesperson, and how to sell anything the candid and kind way. That's kind of my ethos and what I'm about. And it kind of sends out that signal like, here's what I'm here to do. I do get visibility on my email newsletter, but I don't run ads and it's all organic. So the traffic here is a little slow, but it at least connects that I do have an email newsletter. And then I personally write out my, I'll say my copy paste testimonials, but I pair it with how much spend my clients have spent with me on B2B services. So there are a lot of different, I'll say a lot of different ways to write this. It is kind of a formula. But the biggest thing is making sure that your sales angles are like super tight and super unexpected, because that's going to be the thing that sticks with people. Did we have questions?
Yeah, Kendall, we have a question from Kat. She's wondering your thoughts on text versus articles versus images versus videos on LinkedIn.
Oh. Wait, say that again for me.
Text, so on LinkedIn, like type of post. So like text
Mhm.
post, article post, image post, video post.
Yeah.
Just like your thoughts on different
Okay.
posts.
Hot takes loading, people. Hot takes loading. Granted, keep in mind, I am a writer, so I write. I am pro, what is the thing that is going to close my sales without me having to do a bunch of other, sorry for the cursing, but bullshit, basically. Like, what can I do that's going to just run this system in the background so I don't have to worry about it? So recording videos for me, I'm good on video, but I'm like, this is just like, I'm not here to be a TikTok video star. And that's kind of not my bag. It could be, but meh. I prefer to do actual like delivering client services, not recording videos. So revenue generating versus an operational cost. That's kind of my take there. So videos, I'm like, I guess. I'm not trying to be a lifestyle brand either. I'm here to be a B2B sales writer. So that's kind of my take. Articles are fine. I don't know that they're like the most high value unless it's something really important to you that is also selling something that you do. I think if you're just posting an article because you need a post idea, it's kind of a throwaway, to be honest. What was the other content format? Images. LinkedIn images can be powerful, but I would say use sparingly. I know there's some brands that use like the big carousels and those things. I think image carousels are a trap to connect you with your DIYer never buyer if you're not subliminally selling. So it seems cool. It seems like that's going to be the thing. So much energy is drained by not subliminally selling in those style of posts. That if you're selling, I think it's great, but I'm always like, what's the cleanest, fastest way to get the right messaging out there in front of my target audience without having to write said post and then also design said post or pay a writer and a designer. Like the budget's going somewhere, whether that budget is your own time or your budget to pay one or even two contractors to execute it. So I'm just kind of pro, like, what's the fastest in and out the door thing that's going to live in my archive forever. So that's kind of my hot takes there. But again, I'm a writer, so, you know, maybe it's a little strong on one end, but that's what I see that works. And that also works for my clients. Okay. Others? Nope. Okay, sweet. All right, now we're gonna do the real Q&A. What other questions do we have today, my friends, about, LinkedIn? I guess if you have a question that's on your mind, I'm pretty much an open book and I've got time. So if you have questions, I am down to answer them. Anything you want to know? Anything at all? I feel like I just like spit game for over an hour.
You covered so much, and almost everybody who came to this event is still here. This is like there's just so much.
Yeah.
Okay, from Kat, she says posting versus commenting versus interacting on LinkedIn.
Okay. You need to be posting, in my opinion, at least 3 times a week. If you don't have a content library, you can approach it any way you want. You can do 3 times a week and then build up an archive so that eventually after, 6 months to a year, you have enough content in your library where it could be 5 times a week. In an ideal world, it would be 5 times a week. I think, what was the question again? Remind me. I'm getting.
It was posting versus commenting versus interacting. Like,
Yeah. So you definitely want to be posting 5 times a week is the ideal, 3 times at minimum. That should be like clockwork. That should be that is a sales task. That is just like energetic minimum. That is what the business needs to run. It's not a personal energetic investment. It is like, this is what feeds the machine, basically. Then with commenting, I find doing it 3 days a week is great. I usually set myself, and this is in the training, there's kind of a guide to how to start the momentum on the platform. For the record, right now, with the training that I'm going to send you, when I recorded it back in May, it was titled How to Grow Your LinkedIn Audience by 50% every 90 days. Right now, my LinkedIn account grows 60 to 70% every 90 days. So I'm teaching you exactly how to do it, including the commenting and connection request strategy and engagement strategy. But LinkedIn is basically fed on really great content and some form of daily engagement. Again, you got to feed the machine, but don't feed the machine and the corporations that are profiting off of your energetic investment. Do what you need to do to make the business run and close the deals that you need to, and then move on with your life is kind of my general take there. So in the training, it'll go way more in depth, or I'll say the second training, it'll go more in depth, and it will also set you up with a checklist of exactly how to start building over 8 days. It's 45 minutes or less a day to get that account momentum rolling and getting fed by the content that you have and the engagement strategy. So that's coming. Snaps. Okay.
thank you, Kendall. Next question is, any advice on writing your origin story? My career story is squiggly, so sometimes I'm lost at what angle to start at. So advice on writing your origin story.
Yes. Number one piece of advice is always mirror your ideal client's origin story as closely as you can. So, for example, when I talked about mine, I talked about a former corporate path. I talked about, sometimes I'll talk about, like, I had no idea how to sell when I first started a business. Writing content was hard for me. As much as you can, try to bring in elements that parallel your ideal customers' own story. The other thing I'll say, there is an email if you sign up for the email newsletter, it's more of an email tactic, but it could maybe work with, I'll say, like LinkedIn or Instagram. It would just need to be shortened because mine on the email is kind of long. It's the second email in the email sequence you'll get from me. The subject line is what happened when I was 27. And it's a really smart way to use years as a way to timeline out your experience. So that's the second email in my email welcome series. But that, if you just are kind of not sure how to structure it, that's going to at least give you some like close examples. The other thing I would say is you can kind of compare or combine an origin story with a value. So you can tell your origin story 20 different ways. If I wanted to tell my origin story from the angle of one of my values, which is authenticity, I could talk about, and what would connect with my ideal client is like kind of the universal theme is like feeling like I'm selling, but I'm not myself, or I'm selling out. So I could use that theme and that value in many, 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 many different ways. But I find selecting kind of one of those kind of core values that you have, and then zooming in to a specific time in your life and kind of telling the story in that way is a really great way to tell your story like that. It's a literary device from memoir writing, but the idea of like the universal theme versus the ideal reader theme is a really great approach when it comes to like values in an origin story. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question is, how are you measuring ROI of your LinkedIn content on delivering sales?
On delivering sales. So I just measure based on, right now I don't have any lead magnets in my business. I probably get 5 to 10 people who sign up to my email list a week. And they're signing up for my services guide, which is the only lead magnet that I have. I don't do shitty lead magnets. I don't do like things like that. My lead magnet is my services guide to work with me. So I measure it that way. But I'm honestly pretty open as far as like my ROI. I'm making the kind of, money I'd like to, I'm working with the kind of clients I'd like to. So I stay pretty open to what that looks like. I'm also a B2B service provider though. So in reality, like I don't need to sell 200 units of services to, sign clients. That we're talking about like maybe 5 to 10 clients a month. So I kind of keep an eye on that. But I also know that, again, longtime lurker, I could have someone who's in my audience from 2 years ago who's just getting that weekly email newsletter every Monday and Friday, just in there getting nurtured, and then the timing's right for them, and then they sign on to work with me. Or I've also had someone from LinkedIn downloads my services guide, and then, within the first few emails in my email welcome sequence, they've closed within a week. So it's more of like, again, this is why I'm not very pushy on like tracking stuff like that, because it's kind of impossible to know, does the lead that is in your ether, do they have budget? Is it the right time? Are they just like gathering quotes from different providers, or are they just kind of snooping out pricing? It's kind of impossible to know. So I choose not to like use my mental bandwidth on that and trust that like everything's happening for me. I know what the sales signals are that are showing me that the customers and people are kind of in my ether and looking, but I don't necessarily need to know like who's coming. I find anytime for me, like if we're talking about like wealth energetics or like flow of abundance, anytime I'm like white knuckling or I'm deep in a spreadsheet or I'm trying to masculine manage my way and figure out my revenue, like flow of abundance and wealth stops. So I'm like, okay, I set up the masculine system, and then I'm like, again, hanging an open for business sign and kind of open to anything. I get clients that need an offer that is in the services guide. I get custom quotes. I get random requests for very weird things that I know I can help people with, but I don't necessarily try to take a very like masculine, like you've got to dial in the numbers, because it kind of sets a ceiling and to what's possible. And we live in an abundant world, so why not, have abundant opportunities for you and available to you. Okay.
That was our last question in the chat. So I think
That was, what a mic drop. What a great one to end on. So good. So good. Okay, cool. Well, like I said, I have a training that Nicole is going to be sending out all about how to grow your LinkedIn audience by, at the time of the recording, it's 50%. Spoiler alert, I'm running the same engagement strategy and have been since I recorded it in May. And now I'm up to anywhere from 60 to 70%. So that one is up there. So that one's coming. If you are interested in learning more about storytelling that sells, I write about this every single week in my Friday newsletter, Wallflower Fridays. And other than that, did we get another question, Nicole?
just
No?
lots of thank yous, lots of your amazings, lots
Okay,
of this
cool,
was
cool.
wonderful,
Nice.
and so much praise. So yes, we will send out that resource. Thank you for making that available to members.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. And other than that, I'll just say thank you for helping me create a world that's more candid and kind. And with that, Kendall Cherry out.
Thank you, Kendall. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Thank you all. It was wonderful to see all of you. I will let you all go. Bye, everyone. Thanks.
See
Thanks for
y'all.
joining.